Welcome to Top Advisor Marketing, where you will learn how to become a prolific online influencer, attract more ideal clients, and grow your practice. Brought to you by Top Advisor Podcasting, a done-for-you podcasting solution built just for trusted advisors. And now, your co-hosts of Top Advisor Marketing, Kirk Lowe and Matt Halloran.
Hello, this is Matt Halloran again, joined today by one of our favorite guests, as always, Kirk Lowe, founder and owner of Tacta Brand. We are going to talk today about the 5 biggest strategic marketing mistakes advisors make. This is a podcast where you're going to want a piece of paper handy, because the wisdom that Kirk is going to drop on everybody right now is going to be groundbreaking and incredibly important for you to pay attention to. So, Kirk, good morning. How are you, sir?
Excellent. I'm looking forward to talking about this. I think this is kind of like street savvy marketing.
Yeah.
I think advisors, need to know this stuff, and they're probably living it. So hopefully this will be eye-opening, not just because they haven't thought about it, because they're actually doing it and it's not working. And now they've got some confirmation that it's maybe time to do better. Well,
and you've been doing marketing for so long, so this is really a big aggregation list of what you have seen other financial services professionals really make mistakes over the last. How many years have you been doing this again?
I've been doing financial marketing for 17 years. So If I haven't got my pulse on the simple things that that advisors do that aren't working, and the things that will drive more success, that would be a big failure on my part. So hopefully I can share some wisdom that.
Well, we know not only by your thought wisdom that you've been sharing socially and with our audience from now that this is gold. So let's dive into number 1. What is the first of the 5 biggest strategic marketing mistakes advisors make?
I've seen this throughout my whole career, and I don't think early on I really understood the reasons why this in some cases does work, and in more cases than not doesn't work, but it's doing what everybody else is doing. I still get calls all the time. And even from successful people who are trying to get to the next level, who should be at the next level, who just, what's working for everybody else, or what are you doing? What's your number one thing right now? It doesn't always work that way. You got to do what works for you. So just because everybody else, I think seminars have lingered for so long because of this fact, because seminars were so successful for a certain type of advisor, and an advisor who was just, fantastic in front of people who had the revenue, I guess, to invest in seminars because they're pretty expensive, and who seemed to be in an area where they weren't completely watered down with seminars. And then everybody else thought because they worked for somebody who was perfect for doing seminars in the perfect area and had a great pitch, whatever, worked for them too. End up wasting a lot of money or not ever being able to do them right to get the gains that these other advisors were having. So I think just doing something because somebody else is doing it, having success, that's a big problem. And you would know that firsthand, having worked at Peak, and I'll kind of shut up here and let you talk about that.
Well, 2 things real quick. Seminars are fiercely expensive. And unless you are an amazing public speaker and you're looking to do a lot more transactional business, seminars can be they can be successful. But unless you are amazing in front of people, like you said, it really doesn't work. And that's what happened with Peak. Everybody wanted to be like Ron Carson, but there was a fundamental underlying reason why they weren't having the success that Ron was because they weren't Ron Carson. Ron Carson was the greatest salesman I've ever met in my life. I mean, the guy was unbelievable, just so magnetic and all of that stuff. And you can't be like Ron. I mean, yes, we had a lot of people who had a lot of success mirroring some of the things that he did. But then you get to a point, and that point is you have to do something that is true to yourself instead of just following the herd mentality. Ron Carson became Ron Carson because he didn't follow the herd mentality. Ron became Ron. Our goal, I think, with these podcasts, and especially when it comes to marketing, is for you to become your own amazing advisor. And through some of the stuff that are free resources that Kirk has on kirklow.com and the Tactibrand website, you guys can tease out some of that stuff. But unless you're
to be clear to the listeners, are at financialmarketingu.com.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You as in university. Yeah.
Okay.
That's where all the free resources are.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so keep going. So what are some of the other things that you've seen with people just kind of following that herd mentality?
Yeah, just a final thought on Carson stuff is because I don't like beating up the Peak has a really good program, from having worked in and coached it for years. You can learn a lot from the disciplines that Ron Carson and some of the things that they were doing.
Yep.
The key there, and you mentioned it and I mentioned it, is you got to be yourself and you got to work to your strengths. So some of these other ideas mistakes, I guess, that I'm going to share probably shed some light on this too. And the second one, so the first one was what everyone else was doing. The second one is tactics first. So many advisors are looking for tactics versus understanding the strategy or the why, or where are we even headed. And there's some problems here, that one of the biggest problems with all the mistakes we're talking about today, and it's a recurring theme, is that advisors don't typically have a marketing plan. I think everybody thinks a marketing plan is what you used to see as a marketing plan template, which was, a 20-page document. It doesn't need to be anything like that. In fact, if it's one page, it's probably a much better marketing plan than a 20-page one. But when you focus on tactics first, when you're just looking for tactics, then everything is disjointed. And when things are disjointed, it's hard to get the most out of everything or to get anything out of what you're doing. So you have to think about more strategically, and strategic thinking may be something like this: make sure your message is right before you do anything. That's strategic, not tactical, right?
Yeah.
Next thing would be make sure that your website and your social profiles, because you're going to be sending everybody there, they're the hubs of your marketing. Mm-hmm. Make sure that those share your message, it's consistent, and that they ooze credibility, clarity with the audience you work with and what you do for that audience. So, take steps to strategically make sure that you've got your ducks in a row, so to speak. I don't know why ducks in a row.
There's a couple of those analogies, buddy. I never get it.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, then attraction strategy. So once you've got your marketing foundation in place, then you can start looking, at how are we going to get people to our website, to our social profile, so that we can share our message. Then when we get there, how are we going to engage them? What kinds of call to actions are we going to have? Do we have any depth behind our call to actions? Right? Because some people just say, hey, just call us for, no obligation meeting. That's not a good call to action.
Right.
There's nothing behind that they can feel or touch. And, it's a big ask early on. So, do you have papers? Do you have a podcast? Or are you doing a webinar anytime soon? Now, what things do you have? Checklist, a course on, financial planning 101 or something more advanced, whatever it is. You got to have a way to engage them, and your call to actions have to be compelling. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to pause you. Hold on.
To understand your audience and your brand, that'll make a huge difference.
Okay, I'm glad that you just brought that up, because Kirk, I just had a meeting with an advisor this morning, and one of the things that they were so afraid of was, okay, Matt, so what you're telling me to do is you're telling me to get a very, very succinct and clear audience for my brand message, right? So we were talking specifically about working with this specific kind of attorney, and their concern was, well, isn't that going to make other people not want to work with me? So I know this is a little bit of a digression, but you're talking about tactics and you're talking about branding. How can you use a very focused brand message from a tactical perspective and still be able to serve more people? Does that question make sense?
It does. And advisors, we could probably do a whole show on this, but advisors are always terrified of narrowing their niche because they think it's limiting their opportunities.
Yes.
It's in most cases, it's the complete opposite of that.
Yes, it's not limiting at all. Goodness gracious. Well, I'm glad we agree on that.
Yeah. What it does is because when the wider your net is, right, the more different types of people you might appeal to. They can't connect with you. That's the problem, because you do everything for everybody. You don't seem different, unique. You don't seem like you particularly get them, and people are looking for people that get them. If you don't see that showing up in your own life, it might even just be, hockey gear. Like, I was looking at a pair of gloves for one of my kids the other day, and the story of the gear and how protective it was, and the fact that you could zip out the palm, and it was really practical, and I'm really practical. All of a sudden, I started that brand grew on me really quick, because it spoke to me as a parent having 3 kids that play hockey. I need to save money, buy one pair, last forever. Protective, because you see kids getting injured all the time by getting slashed, and you see broken arms, broken hands this year. I know this is a crazy tangent here, but when a brand is clear and it appeals to you, I probably should use a financial brand there, but it makes you can relate to it really quick. And when you can relate to it, all of a sudden you can relate to a whole track or target audience. You just woke up a whole, people, if you will. And that's why it's not limiting. It actually expands your audience, because now people know who you actually work with. So when they see you or read your stuff, see your post, go to your website, listen to your podcast, all of a sudden they're really pumped up, because they realize you've just woken up an audience, because everybody else was asleep looking at your stuff. So you thought it was a big audience, but it's the opposite, because you're not resonating with anybody.
Well, I love the brand loyalty, and that's something that I believe that financial services professionals can create that level of brand loyalty. And I want to get through all of these 5 today. So we do need to do a podcast. Why don't we make a note of that? Let's go ahead and jump into the specificity of niche marketing. I mean, I think that could probably be one of our most successful and most listened to podcasts. But what else from a tactical perspective? So you went over branding, making sure that your social, your client-facing stuff is awesome. We've got attraction and engagement strategies. What are the other couple of things with tactics that are mistakes that advisors are making?
Yeah, so tactically, so branding, website, social profiles kind of build the foundation. Then how are we going to get people to the party? So your attraction strategies. Then when they're there, how are we going to engage them? What kind of call to actions do we have? Have we defined the audience? Next thing is, how are we going to keep in touch with these people? If they're not ready to do business with us now, why would we? That's not a problem at all. They could be ready to do business in 1 month, 6 months, 2 years, 10 years. I recently got a client who'd been following me for over 10 years. He said, I finally decided that you're way better at this than I am. Even though I have a marketing background before I got into financial, and I can't do this myself anymore. I'm tired of, experiencing mediocre success. That was 10 years of influence. I'm much better at influence now than I was 10 years ago. So that maybe prompted him to finally say, you know what, let's work together. But that's what you call influence. I'm constantly writing, constantly sharing. And I think I share prolifically, and I think I share generously in that I'm giving up.
You give away a lot of stuff, Kurt.
It's not salesy, right? I'm really.
No, you genuinely want to help people, and it comes across in your writing. And I think advisors can do the same thing. I want to just echo something that you said there. People buy on their timeline. And if you're not omnipresent, ever present, and continuing to put out good thought leadership, then you're not going to be in that game. Those people are going to get sold by somebody who might not be the best person to buy from. Whereas if you're doing what Kirk does, which is massive engagement thought leadership, becoming a prolific online influencer, that's when people will make those phone calls. And Kirk, I've learned from you on this. This has happened to me. It actually just happened to me. A guy down in St. Louis said, Matt, your article about succession planning has been sitting on my desk since August. And he called me in December. Now, that's not 10 years, mind you. But again, I keep putting out stuff because I've learned that from you, Kirk. I keep putting stuff out, and it just keeps me top of mind, and advisors can do the same thing.
Absolutely. So that influence is huge. I mean, that could be a nurture sequence, like an email nurture sequence. It could just be social media, or an email newsletter. You got to keep in touch with these people. You got to keep reminding them, sharing, and whenever you can, be generous instead of asking or expecting them to do something for you.
Absolutely.
So the more you don't sell, the better.
Yeah.
When you're trying to, be an influencer. That's critical. People will hunt you down, and ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
It happens. So that's a huge one. Tactic. Stop thinking about the one thing and think about a collection of things in the right order that can help you. And if you go to kirklow.com, actually, I believe we've also talked about this on our Top Advisor Marketing podcast. We talk about the blueprint for financial advisor marketing success.
Right.
It's those 4 steps. It's really good to learn those and apply those. If you're going to do a 1-page marketing plan, write those 4 categories down on a page and start writing out how you're going to solve them and how everything integrates. These days, an advisor can do an integrated marketing plan on a pretty limited budget.
Sure.
It's not that complicated. I understand. And this is why we do what we do here and why we share like we share. If we teach an advisor how to do this, there's 2 out of 10, they're going to take it and run with it, do it themselves, and they're going to create momentum in their business, and they're going to become more successful.
Mm-hmm.
There may be 7 of them who think there's some good ideas, but are just too busy to implement it. I'm just throwing numbers at you here.
Right.
And there's 1 out of 10 that says, I would love to do this. I don't have time, but I do have the resources, budget, and we'll hire your company to do that. And you always that's how you market. That's the idea of giving away stuff. Is some people will do it themselves. Some people will take it back to another marketer and say, implement this for me.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll be the ones who say, I want this done by the person who brought it to me, and I don't have the time, and I'll pay them to do it. And that's what this is all about.
Right. Now,
when you're successful at that, then, anyhow, go ahead.
Well, you're talking about tactics and how you should be looking at the big picture instead of just myopically trying to find one thing to do at a time. But your third point here kind of contradicts that a little bit. So tell everybody what that third point is, because we were just talking about tactics. And then tell us what the third of the 5 biggest strategic marketing mistakes advisors make. Yeah,
so the third one is taking on more than you can handle. So we've just said, hey, you can do this yourself. You got to be strategic. You got to think the whole thing out. So you got to have a good plan. So I'm kind of saying, you can do it yourself, but the truth is you got to do it in steps.
Mm-hmm.
And every step that you make should lead to making the next step. Should be about building momentum. So when you take the next step, you've got that momentum to carry forward. Let me give you an example. If you spend all your time and effort doing a bunch of email blasts that are kind of salesy and they don't have any credibility, your website, you didn't take time to fix your website, you don't really have a story, but you're just blasting and trying to get some transactional opportunities. When you go to do the next thing, there wouldn't have been much momentum from that because you didn't start a relationship with anybody. You didn't create a story that you can continue to tell. So what I'm trying to explain is when you're looking at building strategy, you're always building, but you might not necessarily do that all in 1 year. Because if you're doing it yourself, it's going to take longer so don't try to do everything all at once. So if you take on more than you can handle, it's likely not to get implemented.
But it also really gets right into this next the point number 4, right? Which is it's good enough, right?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So number 4, thinking good is enough or good is good enough. If you're trying, the best example I can give you, because I see this all the time, is advisors decide they're going to buy into content marketing. And then they go out there and they either buy the content and it's not great or not really them. And they think that that's going to work. So I'll sign up with a company who has a bunch of articles, some papers, got a bunch of videos. I'll throw them all on my website. That's content marketing. Here we go. Insert Tim, the Toolman Taylor grunt there. So
you're dating yourself there, buddy.
Yeah, I know. That was such a great show, though.
It was a great show. Hey, he's a fellow Michigander. He went to my alma mater. Of course, he sold cocaine there, but that's a different story. All right, keep going.
So, you want to make sure that you do what you can. Like, have a plan and say, like, in the next 6 months, I'm going to figure out this part. Then I'm going to build on that, and I'm going to do this. Marketing is about, really, if you think about it, do I need whatever I implement, does it need to be successful this year, or does it need to be successful for the next 10 or 15 years of my career? Mm-hmm. And the answer should be, 10 or 15 years. So why worry about...
My God, even 5 years, though, dude. I mean, people have such an unrealistic expectation of how quickly this stuff works. It drives me nuts.
Yeah, it is. Think about implementing this over several years and just getting better, but not to the extent that you're going to put so much pressure on yourself that you fail. Don't set yourself up by failure by taking on more than you can handle. That's huge. So pace yourself. And the most important lesson I think right here is focus on building momentum. Do things that create momentum. Everybody thinks that spending time on a brand is useless because it's not attracting new people, and it's complete BS. Mm-hmm. I've seen some of the greatest successes that I've done for financial advisors, and one of the first clients I ever had. All we really did was get him focused on a brand, mm-hmm. grew. Doubled his business in 18 months. Mm. We weren't very good at websites back then, although the threshold for what was considered good was a lot lower than
it is now. Yeah.
That was 15 years ago. Longer than that anyway. But one of the the biggest bang he got was, said, I can just sell better now. Why? Well, I know who I am. Mm-hmm. I've got focus. I know exactly who I want to work with. When I get in front of them, there's no, I'm not kind of going all over the place. I got a story. I got a succinct story. I can back it up because, it's who I am.
Confidence.
And that's important too, because you don't want to build a brand that's not you. And that tends to happen sometimes when you hire people out or you ask other people what you think you should be. Yeah.
Well, and it is confidence, right? All of what you're saying, a good message, a good website, really getting all of your calls to action in place, all of those things, it gives you this level of confidence that allows you to get out and sing the praises of yourself. And people really respond to confidence. In fact, kind of going back to the whole Ron Carson and peak thing, that was one of the greatest things that I think Ron taught people was be confident in your message. People respond to leadership and confidence a lot more than they do to the next new shiny piece of technology. People want to do business with people they have a connection with and have confidence in that they're going to be able to do what they say they're going to do. And a good brand and good messaging builds that confidence within advisors to make them really be able to execute and increase in that situation, double your practice.
Absolutely. So no half-ass marketing. It's basically what I like to refer to it as on this show because we're really classy.
Hey, that's the first swear word either of us have used this entire time. So.
Oh yeah, it's just before and after show, I guess. The after party we got.
That's right. We're not releasing those tapes.
Nobody will be interested in that.
That's right. All right, half-ass marketing. What do you mean by that?
Well, if your message has to be good, you got to be able to believe in it. You can tell somebody who believes in themselves just by reading their website because it'll be focused. Otherwise, it's like, oh, well, you got to put this in or that in too, or I'm not good enough at this. So, make sure they know I do these 10 other services. Be great at something. What I put out there for everybody is Tacta Brand. We're a financial branding company. That is our core expertise. Mm-hmm. It allows us to be better at do other things too. But that's what we're known for. People don't very, 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 it's very infrequent that somebody comes and says, I need a website. Mm-hmm. They have pretty much all come to me and say, I need a brand. Mm-hmm. Why? Because it's all over my website. It's over everything I do. I do talk about other things, but almost always back into the context of you got to have a great message. Mm-hmm. Don't even think about doing this until you have a great message. Anyway, so, you got to, every part of building momentum is about doing a good job at each stage. Have a good message, have a good website, improve, have good social profiles, have great content, have really smart, compelling call to actions for the right audience, and then keep after them with social sharing, influence stuff so that email newsletters, whatever they happen to be, so that when they're ready to do business on their terms, you'll be top of mind.
Yep.
So, yeah. So the thing is implementing bad marketing. You hear all the time, just do it, just get it done. Don't focus on perfection.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about perfection here. We're just talking about
good.
Making sure that what you have is really good. And implementing bad doesn't usually work nearly as well.
Well, break that down, unpack that a little bit, because I mean, we're talking about good and bad, and those are very general terms here. What do you mean by implementing bad? Do you mean by the implementation factor itself is not implemented correctly, or implementing the half-assed material is not going to help, or both?
Yeah, I mean, if you produce a paper that you bought somewhere else, it's not really in line with who you are, but it looked, was something you could buy and put out there, or it's not really relevant to the audience you want to work with, that's just bad content. It's not going to work. Or if you've got a great paper to put out into the world, and they get to your website, and your website just isn't good. If your website's no good, or it doesn't even have a message, and you sound like everybody else, it stops. That's how you don't get. That's why a lot of advisors don't get the referrals that they think they ought to be getting in their business. People just aren't proud. And they know that when somebody goes there, you're going to look like somebody else. So that referral's a dud right out of the gate. It's set up you set your clients up for failure all the time. If they came and you have a great brand, clear audience, clear value proposition, all kinds of content that supports your message and adds a ton of credibility to your site. You have call to actions that are really simple, really generous. You're sharing all the time through social media. That is what inspires people to refer you. We have clients that get, just from following those rules, that get 200 to 400% growth in referrals within 12 months, just from that. So when people say that branding doesn't make a huge impact on your business and having your message in your website, that's how you get better, is you take steps to do all those things right. Bad is just it not being good enough to do anything on its own, or when it leads to the next thing wasn't well thought out, was integrated, and all of a sudden you've lost that opportunity.
That just happened. I had you do a review, you and another partner of ours do a review, because the content that this office that I'm working with, that they're creating, is good content. I mean, really easily digestible blogs, great memes, great quotes. But when they get to the website, everything just falls apart because the website is not engaging. It's like a bait and switch. It's like drunk goggles, right? You think that you're going to go out with one person, and when you get out to the bar, they look totally different. And I think that's some of the things that you're talking about here. But the other reason that I think good is thinking that just kind of half-assing it is good enough, is most of them don't have that even one-page marketing thing that you've been talking about since the beginning. Planning is important, and planners fail to plan for themselves all the time, and they don't realize that it's so vitally important for you to plan not just for your clients' financial lives, but they're also supposed to plan for all of the contingencies of life itself. Well, you need to do that as a business owner too. You need to plan for marketing, budgeting, networking, asset management tools. You should have a plan for all of those, and for some reason, advisors don't put the time in. In fact, the office that I met with this morning, I had said, really successful businesses take 7 to 10% of their overall budget and put it towards marketing. I said, what's yours? And he said, less than 1%.
Yeah.
And I said, if you had a plan, you would realize the value of even 2% or 5%, or, really getting where they need to do for exposure. So let's talk about the marketing plan. And you do on FMU, Financial Marketing University, financialmarketingu.com. We can attach it to the show notes, because you have a free resource for people on this, don't you?
There's a 10-day period where you can go in there now. And then there's a fee after that, but it's pretty nominal. I think it's $20 a month. You can get access to all kinds of different papers, and one of them is a marketing plan. So if you want help writing a marketing plan, there's some resources in there to teach you how to do it, and even a template to make that happen. But yeah, you need to have a plan for to make sure all your marketing is strategic versus just tactical. Has a strategy behind the tactics, if you will, and it's all integrated. and you start to understand the idea of building momentum. So what's the first, what's the order of things that you need to do your marketing in to build momentum. We've already gone over that, and I there's also when we talked about the blueprint for success. So that formula is really important to implement with your marketing plan. So that's how you change. But the mindset is making sure that you don't think, knowing when good is or good isn't, or that good isn't good enough. You gotta think this thing through. You gotta take each step and do it really well. Not necessarily be a perfectionist, but do it really well, and then launch them in a timely manner that you can handle, that you won't fail. You're not setting yourself for failure. And so those are the first four. There's one more.
Well, let me. I would just want to bounce off that one real quick, which is when we're saying the word good. When you look at something and you're like, "That's good," that's different than, I'm just going to throw something out there. It's good enough, right? And that's so important. So many advisors just throw so much, and that really leads us to this next one. They're always throwing stuff up the wall and seeing what sticks. But I want to remind everybody, we're talking about the 5 biggest strategic marketing mistakes that advisors make with Kirk Lowe, founder of Tactibrand. We're already on number 4, so we've talked about doing what everyone else is doing as number 1. Number 2, tactics first. Number 3, taking on more than they can handle. Number 4 was think good is good enough. And then the 5th one is, go ahead.
Is moving from one thing on to the next. And this is we've already kind of talked about this to a degree, but I think it's worth being its own mistake, which is thinking that that when one thing isn't working in a short period of time, that means it's not going to ever work in long term, or understanding why it's not working. I don't think people even understand how to measure success with whatever tactic they've implemented. That's why tactics first is a bad idea, because it doesn't have the glue to kind of keep you there and understand, that perspective on, okay, well, this is just one of the 5 tactics that we're implementing. It doesn't have to have the kind of success that, tactic 3 that we're going to launch next year is going to have. It's got its own job in the strategy. It keeps you focused. But when you move on from one thing to the next because you think it's not working, now you got to be really careful about that. But if you have a plan, that's a lot less likely to happen. If you start running with seminars, spend a lot of money, you're really aggravated and you're freaking out because you're not getting the return on them. In fact, you're losing money. And then all of a sudden you say, these just aren't working, I'm on to the next thing. It's not necessarily the best reason to stop. Maybe if you, for starters, maybe because you should switch to a webinar, reduce a lot of your costs, but still have, maybe your audience is more, willing to do that. Or maybe you need to tone those down, do them less frequently. Or maybe the problem is that when they go to your website, they don't feel it's the same interaction they're getting, when they come to your seminar. Maybe you're just not getting enough people signed up because your website's horrible. So fix your website, fix your message, then maybe seminars will be a lot more successful. Well, so don't give up on certain things.
And I want to talk about
chase the seminar thing. Sorry.
Right. Well, no, but I do want to actually take a moment to talk about seminars. I'm working with an advisor, and I have been for a long time out in LA, and Northern California. And he had been doing seminars for a while. We had created this thing. He's using something called FMT Solutions, which is an educationally based education program, which is different than a product-centered seminar. And we've been tracking this because I happen to really enjoy tracking. And so this is his 3rd year. I think this is his 2nd full calendar year, right? So he did 4 last year. We're on track to do 4 this year. It is quite expensive, but it's funny because his first one, he didn't really feel like he hit a home run. Maybe he hit a single. No way did he hit a double. But those people who came to that first one are now trickling in 12 months later because we ask, hey, you look really familiar. Did you come to one of our educational events? And the person said, yeah, I came 12 months ago. And he's befuddled by this. He's just like, oh my God, I can't believe, why is it taking them so long to make a decision? Getting back to the people buy on their own time frame, not yours. But you have to give those things time to settle in. And what we found out now is he has already broken even from all of the costs from the first year, right? And so now everything that he's making from that first year is gravy. And we know what sort of time frames now, since we're tracking it, that people will have. Now, that's a lot shorter of a time frame than I think what you and I are really focusing on here, that you have to have a long view on an overall marketing plan. But you what's
perfect
that?
Analogy. Let me interject with
Sure.
how good an analogy this actually is based on what we're talking. So imagine you've run that for a year. You're in your second year. You're starting to get stuff coming back that you'd done a year ago, right? So that's feeling pretty good. Now the advisor's thinking, well, why did it take 12 months? So what if you put another tactic in that says we're okay with 12 months, but what if we can make it 6 months? So now we put a nurture sequence in place that after they leave the seminar, we have a couple things that we do. One is maybe every second one we do, how did we do survey. Maybe we start sending them articles, papers, checklists, and things after they've been to the seminar that get them really excited. Then we introduce them to a podcast maybe in the third year, and that starts to engage them even more. So imagine when we do other little things that make seminars more successful instead of saying, you know what, we just broke even. It took us 12 months to break even on this. I'm a little bit worried about it. It's kind of expensive. Let's stop and let's just start doing podcasts. Let's see if podcasts alone will work for us. Or, let's just switch over to direct mail. I'll just try to get them in for meetings to do a report and analysis on Social Security, problems. And I mean, I think that's a great story to kind of give the perspective of how you add other elements and tactics when it's based on a strategy that make this way more compelling.
Well, and it's that layered effect. And to be honest, Kirk, I'm going to give you credit for that too, because that's something that I've really learned. I went back to him and said, okay, where are all the names of the people who didn't show up? Well, what are you talking about? People who RSVP'd, so you have their contact information, but they didn't show up. And he's like, well, I'm sure they're somewhere. Okay, give me that list. And that list ended up being like 150 people.
They may be the best part of the list.
And
they were interested in what you did.
Yep.
They just didn't have any time to show up.
And they didn't.
They don't have time.
That's it.
They're interested.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden we start dripping through a nurture sequence on these people, and he starts getting business from those people. See, that I love these 5 biggest strategic marketing mistakes, because it really does add upon the other. And if you're an advisor taking notes on these things and you realize, oh my God, I am so guilty of this, because to be really honest, it's not just financial advisors, it's entrepreneurs in general. They're consistently doing these 5 mistakes. But you have to realize that if you execute one thing and it is successful, don't just let it lie on its own. Start wrapping these things that Kirk's talking about, the nurture sequence, the better website, the good social touches, invite them to other things. Just start creating this culture of receptivity. And we know that the more receptive you are and the more lines that you cast out into the ocean, the more fish you're going to catch.
Absolutely.
All right. What am I missing? Give us some final thoughts here.
I mean, this stuff, it took us, 30, 35 minutes to go through all this. It's going to take you years to probably implement the right way. Stop fretting about that. In 3 years, you'll be so happy that you took the time to build momentum in your practice, to do it the right way, to have good marketing. It's going to last a long time. So go take the steps to get this done right. Follow our podcast, because we're going to talk about a lot of things. Go to Financial Marketing University and learn some stuff that you didn't already know, and be able to go back to those resources when you're ready to implement them. There's stuff available to you to make a huge difference in your business. But the first thing I think that we didn't really talk about a lot is really that mindset shift here. Think about marketing over the long term, and not just what you're going to do in the next 3 months. I know people talk about breaking down your business into 90-day segments, but do 90 days of building momentum instead of just, okay, well, what are we going to do this month, this quarter? It has no relationship necessarily with what you did last quarter or what you're going to do in the quarter coming. hopefully that was a good parting thought.
It is. And it's like a marathon. So I say that to my clients all the time. What we're doing is we're preparing for a marathon. Yes, are you going to do abs, core, glutes, flexibility? You're going to do all of those things. But the long-term goal is to run, a 26.3 or whatever the heck it is. As you can tell, I've never run a marathon, but, race. All of this should be making you go towards a much longer direction. If you want to be that guy in your area who is the person who works with gastroenterologists because you have a huge place in your area, you need to build up that critical speed, and you need to train for it. You need to make sure that all of your material is facing towards, those sorts of careers, and it does take a while. Entrepreneurs in general aren't patient.
Yeah, I think the idea of a marathon freaks people out, business owners out, because they want, they'd much rather be a sprint to the pot of gold. Mm-hmm. But the truth is this business is really a marathon. Even how you work with your clients, everything. Mm-hmm. So you gotta focus on understanding that you're actually in a marathon, whether or not you feel like you want to, take that approach. It's the race you're in. So, deal with it.
Well, and it's taking the long view. I think I've said this before on podcasts, but I'll close with this today. When I was teaching my kids how to ride bikes, we were up at the top of this hill, and I have twin boys, and so I was teaching them at the same time. And I was holding onto the back of their seats, and I let go of my first son, and he was staring at the front tire, and he was trying to miss every single solitary bump in this grassy hill. And, of course, he bit it, right, which I told him that they were going to do, and he got up and brushed himself off and, walked back up the hill. And I let my other son go, and he's looking clear down the hill. And so he wasn't overcompensating. He was just kind of riding through it. And he successfully made it to the hill, and then he fell down. Of course, they always fall down. Business owners need to look at it that way. What happens is we are so focused on what's happening today that we overcompensate, and it messes you up for any sort of long-term planning. If you've ever ridden a bike or if you've ever run a race, you don't look at your feet. You look down the road. And by having a good marketing plan in place, like the one Kirk is talking about, and you can get online, that allows you to focus long term, allows you to focus way down the road. Yes, you're still going to make decisions in the moment, but when you're only living in the moment, you're never going to be able to be as successful as you want to be. If you look at all of the really, truly successful financial services professionals in our industry, they have always taken the long view. And with that, Kirk, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
And we just talked about the 5 biggest strategic marketing mistakes advisors make, and I will see you on the other side of the mic.